In order to incorporate the findings and recommendations of Banks Engineering and the Stakeholders Committee, we are bringing to you an amendment for that resolution.
Thank you. Mrs. Couture, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Starting with, on page 22, at the bottom, the language says, after all infrastructure improvements are completed, all actual costs have been paid, and debt, if necessary, finalized, then the assessment per ERU cost will be recalculated, and either, 1, the ERU assessments decrease or increase, with any such increase approved by the board, and or 2, the number of years of the assessments will be adjusted to pay all obligations. I know Commissioner Doherty brought this up last week at pre-agenda, and can you explain this, please?
Actually, I believe Deb Smith, our finance manager, worked with the MSBU area of Gordon Berger's department, and I think she can explain that better than I can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Smith, Fiscal Services. We looked at this section and wanted it to reflect what we actually do to compute the assessment rate. This is just cleaning up language. It allows us to reduce the rate or increase the rate. Any increase, of course, needs board approval. And it also allows us to bring a proposal to extend the years, if costs came in high, to extend the years at the same rate to recoup instead of increasing it, which has been done in prior MSBUs also. And I worked very closely with the clerk's office to make sure the language was correct and showed how we actually do compute the assessments.
Excuse me, point of information. So you're saying that an increase, if you extended the term, that's considered an increase?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Duffy.
Okay. This board, and maybe it wasn't totally this board, it was prior to Commissioners Doherty and Truex being on the board. We started out with an estimate of what it would be per home, and the estimate was $13,000 per home. The commission at that time said, we will not, that's unacceptable. That's too high. And staff went back, and with some assistance and some new information, they were able to find more cost-effective ways for the installation that would result in lower costs to the citizens. And the lower cost was $9,998. In my mind, that is the maximum it could be. I can't possibly approve this if there is a chance that the citizens or homeowners would be charged more than $9,998. So if this is allowing for an increase, I can't possibly support it. I can't possibly support it. I can't possibly support it.
No. The final resolution, which will be brought to the board during the July hearings, states that the amount, the annual amount, and the maximum amount are exactly the same. So when that goes to you in July, that is exactly what it says. Again, I just take the costs that are given or incurred to calculate the rate. So, but it is on the final resolution that the maximum and the actual annual rate calculated on the estimate right now are exactly the same.
But that's not what it says in here. And that's, if we're misunderstanding it, okay, then explain it. But if it sounds like the price could go up, and I can't agree with that.
If I could share with you some information, any project that the county does, no matter if it's for roads or stormwaters or utilities or parks or whatever, the engineers do a calculation as to what they believe the costs will come in at, and that is the information that is then provided to the board for decision making. And every single MSBU that Charlotte County Utilities has done has come in under budget up until for the past 10 years, every MSBU that we've done. So this particular project was examined for costing by our engineering department along with Banks' engineering department. And I can have Mr. Bullard speak to that because he was reviewing the entire project over the weekend for the costing. You give it your best guess as to what it's going to come in at. You give a contingency factor in order to allow for any slight deviations, and then that is the cost that is attached to the project. Only in the event, once again, regardless of what the project is, only in the event of some extraordinary circumstance would it ever change. That's never happened to us. Our projects have always come in under budget. So this language that is here in this document is the way that any governing body would deal with any extraordinary event. If the bid comes in, and which would be next year, the bid comes in from the contractor and it's within budget, everything is fine. If something comes in that is very, very different, that would change the assessment, the board would have that opportunity next year to reject the bids and stop the project at that time. So there are many opportunities to keep looking at the project, make sure it's coming in line with projections, make sure everything is being completed milestone by milestone. Once again, Mr. Bullard would be happy to share with you how we came up with the cost projections, working along with the Bank Engineering Group and Giffords Webster to determine those costs.
Terry, are you saying that this is like we do with all the other MSBUs where we know we vote on a maximum?
Yes,
Like-
ma'am.
Okay, so when we vote on the maximum, I am assuming, unless it's less, will be $9,998.
Yes, ma'am.
And nothing, there can't be any deviation up, only down, correct?
There absolutely, as the project continues, and let's just assume for a minute, which has happened so often in many of our other MSBUs, the costs actually come in less. We start lowering the assessment amount, or we shorten the term. Some of our projects were originally set for 20 years and have been shortened to less than 10 because we were able to pay it off early, or we were able to lower the assessment. For the 10 years that I've been here, that's exactly how the projects have run their course.
Well, that's fine, Terry. And fortunately that projects have come in lower, not higher. But this language is not acceptable. I can't, it's the way it reads tells me that there could be an increase, and I can't go for, that's just unacceptable to me. So that's enough of my questions.
A number of questions came up at one time or another. I think the first thing to deal with is, yeah, there was a $13,000 figure that was put out in the past, and that figure is now $7,600 for the installation. There were several other concerns brought up over the past several months, particularly out of the group in the community, the Save Our Sewer group, and they said, well, what about someone who really can't afford to do this? And I think the commission went back and said, we appreciate that, and we understand that, and we've come up with a segment of the proposal now that will address the fact that if someone is on low or limited income, they're going to get some extra special consideration in this. And then the question came out, so I don't know, Commissioner Duffy and I had the same concern here, and it's been addressed. You know, that paragraph on page 22 or 23, even though, and you pointed this out well, history has indicated the rates really haven't gone up. For the most part, they've gone down. I would be much more comfortable if we would lock that in and say the rate will not exceed $7,800, putting a ceiling on it. And I know it's not the traditional language we use, but I think if folks could be a little bit more comfortable realizing, well, this is the max it's going to be. I think, again, we're laboring under the fact that we've been told, not, asked to do this, we've been told this is something we have to do. Number one, I would like to change that language. And the county attorney may not be excited with it or like the idea, and either may the finance people. but I guess I've made suggestions before that they don't like or aren't excited by. But I think in the risk of good faith and trying to send a message to the folks in the community that we understand their concern, even though individually we're not, we feel that we would stand behind that. I'd like to see the language put in there to lock in the $7,600 figure, that it would go no higher. And also, if we're going to go ahead with the interest rate, to lock in that 20-year payback figure at the $9,900, whatever that figure is.
Of concerns, as you do, over this, quote, not to exceed. So I'm concerned that we've got a lot of work to do on the drawings. We don't have permits. We don't have construction documents completed. And we're working off of engineering opinions of cost. Honestly, I'm very uncomfortable with assessing. I'm very uncomfortable with assessing. I'm very uncomfortable with assessing the taxpayers, the people out in this area, until we truly have our arms around the final guaranteed cost. And I appreciate what you're doing. It's an industry standard.
Cost based on estimates, on engineering estimates, but we really need to look at construction estimates so we have a much firmer idea of what this really is going to cost. And if it means not doing any assessment this year, that may be what we have to do. So therefore, for today's purposes, just on the amendments to the resolution for today, I would move approval.
Oh, look!
A second for discussion.
Okay. Rates, I want to say that they're not going to exceed the $7,600 fee, and if we keep the interest rate where it is, that it's not going to exceed the $9,000 fee, and I want to lock that into the agreement and put this off and say, well, we're not going to consider this for another fiscal year. I still want to lock those figures into the agreement because we can always make them lower. Is that nuts? You know, it's what I'm saying. If we say, hey, we're going to lock the figures in at $7,600, and we're going to lock the $99,900 figure in today, we could always make them lower, but that would be a not to exceed. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
I have problems with the language, but you can't come to a not to exceed without having some knowledge and being further down the process. You can't come to a not to exceed without having some knowledge and being further down the process. So we're at a catch-22 on that issue, and I am uncomfortable with the language. The language was presented back, I think, on about the 7th of May. We've had different discussions about it. Language added to make certain they had to come back here for a vote, so on and so forth. But I'm still not comfortable with where we are. The other part of it on the rebate program, my problem again goes back to the language, and the current language I'm uncomfortable with. I don't know the answer. Pushing this down the road a year. We need to have more information, because I think it should be a not to exceed kind of a number. I believe that gives everybody the most open discussion about what the true costs really are, and it would eliminate at least that portion of concern. It's not going to eliminate a bunch of other concerns, but for this discussion and what we're talking about with this resolution, I think that's important to handle.
Other changes to the resolution, I believe, we can make during the process. So the language in here about after all improvements have been completed and recalculations and all that, I think work themselves out with time. That language, if in fact we get a construction manager on board and we get a guaranteed maximum price in a year, that becomes more or less a safeguard for some natural disaster or some other event that staff can't predict. But right now we've got more than that on the table. That's really going to vote against any assessment on that date for this coming year, because we're not ready yet. However, I think we need not ready to drop a special assessment on these folks until we have all the dollars and know that that's a guaranteed maximum price not to exceed, or whatever the term we want to use. So the funding of the engineering and permitting and the CM at risk.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve and a second on the resolution. Okay. And the full understanding is that amendments to this can still be made up until July, and that's when the first or second public hearing is? First public hearing. So this whole thing, if we don't have the proper answers we're looking for by then, we could certainly motion to postpone it for a year or make whatever changes we want to. Is that the understanding?
That's my
Yes.
understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no.
Aye.
Okay. So we have
I didn't
4 to
listen
1.
Very well, I said aye instead of no.
So is it a no or?
It's a no.
It's a no. Okay. So it's 4 to 1. All right. Thank you.